Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a huge question for our globalized age. Is the world becoming one giant flat marketplace? Or do the deep divisions between countries still call all the shots? To figure this out, we're going to look at everything from a tech giant's massive gamble in China to the classic theories that, believe it or not, still shape our world today.
So, let's kick things off with a story. The year is 2006. Google, a company famous for its simple, kind of powerful motto, "Don't be evil," decides to launch its search engine in China. And in doing so, it ran smack into one of the most sophisticated systems of internet censorship on the planet, the Great Firewall. And what happened next? Well, it was this high-stakes drama playing out for the whole world to see. For years, Google actively censored its search results there, scrubbing topics the government considered sensitive, like the Tiananmen Square massacre or the Falun Gong movement. This caused a huge backlash back home. I mean, you had US lawmakers comparing the company to Nazi collaborators. The whole thing finally exploded in 2010, when, after a major cyber attack that came from China, Google just said, that's it. They announced they would no longer censor search results, which basically meant pulling their search engine from the mainland.
Now, this story is so compelling, not just because it's Google, but because it's the perfect snapshot of the central conflict in our global economy. It really brings up a question that every international business, and hey, all of us really, has to wrestle with. It makes you ask that fundamental question: is all this technology, all this trade, actually erasing borders and creating what the author Thomas Friedman famously called a flat world? Or are those deep, deep differences between countries still the most important thing? And this question, it's right at the heart of a massive debate in international business. Are we living in a flat world, or is it a spiky one? Okay, so on one side, you've got the flat world theory. This idea basically says that technology and open markets are making geography totally irrelevant, right? A software developer in Mumbai can compete with one in Michigan. But on the other side, you've got the spiky worldview. Professor Pankaj Ghemawat is a big champion of this, and he argues that nope, the world is not nearly as connected as we think it is, and those deep differences between countries still create enormous barriers for businesses. So, to prove the world is still spiky, they use this tool called the cage framework. It argues that the real distance between countries has 4 dimensions. You've got cultural distance, different languages, different values. Then there's administrative distance, conflicting laws and political systems, which was Google's #1 problem. Then, of course, geographic distance, the actual physical space, and finally, economic distance, those huge differences in wealth. Honestly, Google's whole experience in China was a masterclass in how all 4 of these distances can just throw up massive, massive roadblocks. So how did we even get here? To really get a handle on this whole flat versus spiky world debate, we've got to hit the rewind button for a second and look at how our ideas about trade have changed over time. For centuries, the big idea was mercantilism. Think of it like a giant zero-sum game. The goal for every country was to pile up this massive hoard of gold and silver. And how'd you do that? By exporting everything you could and importing as little as possible. You'd force other countries to pay you the difference in cold, hard treasure. It was pretty much economic policy as a battle for riches. But then, a truly revolutionary idea came along that just flipped everything on its head. It's called comparative advantage, and it's best explained by this really simple question. You've got a top lawyer who can type faster than her assistant. So should she fire the assistant and just do her own typing? No way. Of course not. Every single hour she spends typing is an hour she's not spending on high-value legal work where she creates way more value. The key takeaway is that both the lawyer and the assistant are better off when they each specialize in what they do relatively best. And that's the core of comparative advantage. Nations get richer by focusing on what they're most efficient at producing and then just trading for everything else. But hang on, there's a catch. These classic theories, mercantilism, comparative advantage, they mostly talked about entire countries. To understand globalization today, a world of brands like Google, Toyota, and Apple, we need a way to explain why specific companies from specific nations become these global champions. And that brings us to a much more modern and, frankly, powerful tool for understanding why certain countries seem to breed these powerhouse companies in specific industries. Okay, so meet Michael Porter's diamond model. The central idea here is that a nation's competitive advantage in a certain industry, think Italy in luxury fashion or the US in software, it's not about one single thing. No, it's about a powerful interlocking system of 4 different elements all working together. So what are these 4 elements? First up, you have the nation's factor conditions, stuff like skilled workers or great infrastructure. Second, there's demand conditions. Are your local customers really sophisticated and demanding? Because that pushes companies to get better. Third, you absolutely need strong related and supporting industries, a whole ecosystem of world-class suppliers. And finally, and this is a big one, you need intense firm strategy, structure, and rivalry right at home. That fierce local competition is what forges companies into global champions. And that's the real magic of it, right? When a country gets all four of these elements humming for a specific industry, it creates this self-reinforcing cycle, a total hotbed of innovation that becomes incredibly hard for companies from other countries to even touch. It explains why certain industries just cluster and dominate from very specific places. Which brings us all the way back to our big question. After looking at everything from Google's showdown in China to the theories of trade and competitive advantage, what's the final verdict? Is the world flat or is it spiky?
Well, the truth is, it's not one or the other. It's both. And they're happening at the exact same time. The world is flattening, for sure, and that's creating incredible opportunities for global connection. But that very flatness makes us run headfirst into the spikes, those deep, persistent differences in culture, law, and economics that companies ignore at their own risk.
So at the end of the day, the real challenge isn't picking a side in the debate. It's about understanding that to succeed today, you need a full toolbox. You have to leverage the forces that are flattening the world while always respecting the power of those spikes. Because in international business, the biggest mistake you can make isn't choosing the wrong map. It's believing there's only one.